Dr. Karos recoiled in disgust, eyes wide with shock as he took in the grotesquely disfigured humans writhing on the experimentation tables before him. The renowned Vidian xenobiologist had traveled to the remote human colony on Zephyr 6 expecting to study exotic flora and fauna, but instead found himself confronted by the unsettling fruits of unrestrained human genetic manipulation. Zephyr 6's harsh, irradiated environment had long been deemed inhospitable to most sentient life. Yet as Karos explored the settlement, he marveled at the colonists' uncanny ability to not only endure but flourish in conditions that would rapidly kill a Vidian. At first, he attributed their resilience to human tenacity and advanced technology. But the truth, he soon discovered, was far more disturbing. In a restricted medical facility, Karos bore witness to the extremes to which the colonists had taken bioengineering. Human test subjects, their bodies hideously warped, were subjected to brutal experiments designed to push the boundaries of their genome's plasticity. The nightmarish images seared into Karos's mind, limbs contorted into unnatural positions, organs exposed, features rendered unrecognizable by uncontrolled mutations. Horrified, Karos confronted colony leader Anthony Robinson and demanded an explanation. Robinson's revelation shook Karos to his core. Earth's government had sanctioned these experiments as part of a secret super soldier program aimed at creating warriors capable of surviving any environment to wage an impending war against a hostile alien race. The ethical implications staggered the Vidian doctor. Knowing he had to act before it was too late, Karos vowed to expose the truth and stop the experiments. But as he raced to alert his people and gather support from the wider galaxy, dark forces conspired to silence him at any cost. Entangled in a web of intrigue that threatened to spark an interstellar war, Karos would soon learn the true lengths to which desperate humans would go to ensure their survival and dominance among the stars. Dr. Karos steeled himself as he entered the lab of Dr. Lena Sorensen, the colony's lead geneticist. The sterile white walls and gleaming equipment belied the horrors he suspected lay beneath the veneer of scientific progress. Sorensen looked up from her work, her eyes widening as she recognized the Vidian doctor. "Dr. Karos, I wasn't expecting you," she said, her voice tinged with apprehension. "What brings you to my lab?" Karos fixed her with a steady gaze. "I think you know, Dr. Sorensen. I've seen the experiments, the abominations you've created in the name of military might." Sorensen's shoulders sagged, and she averted her eyes. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," she whispered. "We were meant to be improving human resilience, finding ways to help our species survive in the harshest conditions. But somewhere along the way, the lines blurred, and the ends began to justify increasingly unethical means." Karos softened his tone, sensing the geneticist's turmoil. "I understand the pressure you must be under, but this cannot continue. The price in suffering is too high." Sorensen looked up, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "You're right, Dr. Karos. I can't be a part of this anymore." She turned to her computer, her fingers flying over the keys. "Here," she said, handing Karos a data chip. "This contains all the classified documents detailing our work, the genetic modifications, the intended applications, everything. Take it and expose the truth." Karos accepted the chip, a sense of urgency rising within him. "Thank you, Dr. Sorensen. I will ensure this information reaches the right people." As he turned to leave, alarms began to blare throughout the facility. Sorensen's face paled. "They know," she gasped. "Robinson must have been monitoring my lab. We need to get you out of here now." The two scientists raced through the corridors, the sound of heavy boots echoing behind them. They burst out of the facility into the harsh, irradiated landscape of Zephyr 6, the acrid air burning their lungs. "Where can we go?" Karos panted, scanning the desolate terrain. Sorensen pointed towards a distant ridge. "There's an old supply cache in the caves beyond that ridge. We can hide there until we figure out our next move." As they fled into the wilderness, Karos clutched the data chip, knowing that the fate of not just the colony, but potentially the entire galaxy, rested in his hands. The evidence he carried could bring an end to the unethical experiments and prevent an interstellar war, but only if he could survive long enough to deliver it. Behind them, The genetically enhanced soldiers led by Commander Damian Reeves poured out of the facility, their enhanced senses and superior strength making them lethal pursuers. Karos and Sorensen pushed themselves to the limits of their endurance, the treacherous terrain of Zephyr 6, their only ally in the desperate race to stay ahead of their hunters. As they navigated the jagged rocks and toxic geysers, Karos couldn't shake the sense that they were on the precipice of something far greater and more terrible than he had ever imagined. The secrets hidden in the colony's labs were just the beginning, and he knew that the journey ahead would test not only his own drive, but the very nature of what it meant to be a sentient being in a galaxy where the lines between progress and perversion were increasingly blurred. Karos and Sorensen scrambled over the ridge, their lungs burning from the toxic atmosphere. Behind them, the thunderous footfalls of Reeves' enhanced soldiers grew closer. As they crested the hill, Sorensen stumbled, her foot catching on a jagged rock. "Leave me," she gasped, clutching her ankle. "You have to get that data off-world." Karos hesitated, his four-fingered hand gripping Sorensen's arm. "I can't abandon you to them." A high-pitched whine cut through the air. Karos looked up to see a sleek craft descending from the swirling, irradiated clouds. Its design was unmistakably Vidian. "It's one of your people's ships," Sorensen exclaimed. The vessel touched down, kicking up a cloud of reddish dust. Its hatch opened with a hiss of hydraulics, revealing an empty cargo bay. Karos helped Sorensen to her feet. "It must be on autopilot. Come on!" They limped towards the ship as plasma bolts from Reeves's weapons sizzled past them. Karos all but threw Sorensen into the craft before leaping in himself. The hatch sealed shut just as Reeves and his men reached the crest of the hill. The ship's engines roared to life, pressing Karos and Sorensen into the deck as it rocketed skyward. Through a small viewport, Karos watched Zephyr 6 shrink to a poisonous marble before vanishing altogether. Hours passed in tense silence as the automated craft carried them deeper into space. Karos tended to Sorensen's injured ankle, using the ship's basic medical supplies. "Where do you think it's taking us?" Sorensen asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Karos shook his head. "I don't know, but anywhere is better than—" A shrill alarm cut him off. Red warning lights bathed the cargo bay. Karos rushed to a control panel, his fingers dancing across unfamiliar buttons. "What's happening?" Sorensen called out. "We're almost out of fuel," Karos replied, his voice tight. The ship wasn't designed for long-range travel. It must have been a short-range shuttle that picked up our life signs. Sorensen's face paled. "So we're going to die out here after all." Karos's spotted brow furrowed in concentration. "Not if I can help it." He located the ship's communication array and began broadcasting on all frequencies. "This is Dr. Karos of the Vidician Science Academy. Our vessel is critically low on fuel. We are in possession of vital information regarding illegal human genetic experimentation. To any ships in range, we need immediate assistance." For agonizing minutes, there was only static. Then a clear voice crackled through the speakers. "Dr. Karos, this is Admiral Zara Nexi of the VNS Intrepid. We've locked onto your position and are moving to intercept. Hold tight." Relief flooded through Karos. He turned to Sorensen with a wan smile. "It seems our luck hasn't run out yet." The shuttle's viewport filled with the imposing bulk of a Vidian warship. Tractor beams locked on, guiding the smaller craft into a cavernous docking bay. As the shuttle touched down, Karos saw a welcoming committee assembling, led by a stern-faced Vidian woman in an admiral's uniform. "Are you ready?" Karos asked Sorensen, who nodded nervously. The shuttle's hatch opened, and Karos stepped out to face Admiral Nexi, acutely aware of the weight of the data chip in his pocket and the magnitude of the information it contained. The fate of 2 species, and perhaps the entire galaxy, now rested on what transpired in the next few moments. The Intrepid shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace, its hull scarred from the recent battle. Through the viewport, Dr. Karos watched the gleaming metropolis of Vidia Prime grow larger. Despite the ship's battered state, a sense of relief washed over him. They had made it. Admiral Nexi's voice crackled over the intercom. "Dr. Karos, report to the main airlock. We're docking in 5 minutes." As Karos gathered his belongings, he felt the weight of the data chip in his pocket. The fate of two species rested on that tiny piece of technology. The moment the airlock cycled open, a contingent of armed Vidian guards surrounded Karos and Nexi. Without a word, they were escorted through gleaming corridors and into a high-speed transport tube. Karos caught glimpses of the sprawling capital through the tube's transparent walls, towering spires of iridescent metal and crystalline structures that seemed to defy gravity. The tube came to an abrupt stop, depositing them at the entrance of an imposing edifice. "The Hall of Deliberation," Nexi whispered. "The High Council awaits." They were led into a cavernous chamber. At its center, a semicircular table loomed, occupied by 7 stern-faced Vidians. At the head sat a regal figure Karos recognized from broadcasts, High Chancellor Zova. "Dr. Karos," Zova's voice echoed through the chamber, "you claim to have evidence of human atrocities that threaten galactic stability. Present your findings." For the next hour, Karos laid out everything he had witnessed on Zephyr 6. He described the grotesque experiments, the super soldier program, and the colony's true purpose. As he spoke, holographic displays flickered to life, showing the data from Dr. Sorensen's chip. The council members' expressions ranged from shock to outrage. One, a wizened Vidian with cybernetic implants, leaned forward. "This is preposterous. Humans lack the technological capability for such advanced genetic manipulation." Karos was about to respond when alarms blared throughout the chamber. A holographic display materialized, showing a Vidian in a military uniform. "High Council, forgive the interruption. We've received a distress call from Outpost Sigma 9. They're under attack." Chancellor Zova's eyes narrowed. "Show us." The display changed, revealing a scene of devastation. The Vidian outpost lay in ruins, fires raging unchecked. Bodies littered the ground. But what caught Karos's attention were the weapons scattered among the debris, unmistakably of human design, far more advanced than anything he had ever seen. "Impossible," breathed one of the council members. Chancellor Zova's voice cut through the stunned silence. "It seems, Dr. Karos, that your warnings were not exaggerated. We must act swiftly." She turned to Admiral Nexi. "Prepare our fleets. We may be facing war." As the council erupted into frantic discussion, Karos felt a hand on his shoulder. It was Nexi. "Come with me," she said quietly. "There's someone you need to meet." They slipped out of the chamber and into a small, secure room. A holographic figure flickered to life, a Vidian woman with the insignia of Special Forces on her uniform. "Dr. Karos, this is Lieutenant Josie Kral," Nexi introduced. "She'll be leading a covert mission back to Zephyr 6. Kral nodded curtly. "Doctor, we need everything you know about the colony's defenses, layout, and any potential allies we might find there." As Karos began to brief Kral on the intricacies of Zephyr 6, he couldn't shake the feeling that events were spiraling out of control. The next few days would determine the course of galactic history, and he was at the center of the storm. The deafening blare of alarms shattered the tense atmosphere in the small, secure room. Dr. Karos froze mid-sentence, his spotted brow furrowing as he exchanged worried glances with Admiral Nexi and the holographic projection of Lieutenant Josie Kral. "We're under attack," Nexi barked, her hand flying to her communicator. "All personnel, battle stations." The floor beneath them shuddered violently, and the lights flickered. Karos stumbled, catching himself on the edge of a console. "What's happening?" Before Nexi could respond, the door burst open. A Vidian soldier, his uniform torn and bloodied, staggered in. "Admiral, human forces have breached our defenses. They're inside the complex." Nexi's eyes widened in disbelief. "Impossible! How did they—" Another explosion rocked the building, cutting her off. The hologram of Kral flickered and vanished. "We need to move now," Nexi ordered, drawing her sidearm. She grabbed Karos by the arm and pulled him towards the exit. "Stay close, Doctor." They emerged into chaos. The once pristine corridors of the government complex were now filled with smoke and the sounds of distant weapons fire. Vidian soldiers rushed past them, shouting orders and coordinating defenses. As they rounded a corner, Karos caught sight of the attackers for the first time. His blood ran cold. They were human, but not like any humans he had ever seen. Their movements were unnaturally fast, their bodies bulging with enhanced musculature. They tore through Vidian defenses with terrifying efficiency. "The super soldiers," Kairos whispered, horror dawning on his face. "They've come for the data." Nexi pushed him into an alcove as plasma bolts sizzled past. "We can't let them get it. The fate of both our species depends on that information." A familiar voice boomed through the smoke-filled corridor. "Dr. Kairos, we know you're here. Surrender the data and no one else needs to die today." Kairos felt his heart racing. "Commander Reeves," he hissed. Nexi's grip on her weapon tightened. "We need to get you to the evacuation shuttles. Can you fly one?" Kairos nodded, his throat dry. "Good. I'll create a diversion. When I give the signal, run for the hangar bay. Don't stop for anything." Before Kairos could protest, Nexi leapt from cover, unleashing a barrage of fire down the corridor. The air filled with the acrid smell of ozone as plasma bolts crisscrossed the space between them and Reeves's forces. "Now!" Nexi shouted. Kairos ran, his feet pounding against the polished floor. Behind him, he heard the sounds of hand-to-hand combat as Nexi engaged the super soldiers. He forced himself not to look back, focusing only on the path ahead. He burst into the hangar bay, his lungs burning. A sleek Vidian shuttle sat on the launch pad, its engines already humming to life. As he sprinted towards it, a figure stepped out from behind a stack of crates. "Not so fast, Doctor," Commander Reeves sneered, leveling a weapon at Kairos's chest. Kairos skidded to a halt, his heart pounding. He raised his hand slowly, acutely aware of the data chip still hidden in his pocket. "Hand over the data, Kairos," Reeves demanded, his augmented muscles rippling beneath his combat suit. "You have no idea what forces you're meddling with." "You're right," Kairos replied, his voice steadier than he felt. "I don't. But I know enough to understand that what you're doing is wrong. It has to stop." Reeves's finger tightened on the trigger. "Last chance, Doctor. The data, or—" A plasma bolt struck Reeves in the shoulder, sending him spinning. Lieutenant Josie Kral emerged from the shadows, her weapon trained on the fallen commander. "Get to the shuttle, Doctor," she shouted. "I'll hold them off." Kairos didn't hesitate. He sprinted up the shuttle's ramp as Kral engaged Reeves in close-quarters combat. The hatch sealed behind him, and he threw himself into the pilot's seat. As the shuttle lifted off, Kairos caught a glimpse of the battle raging across Vidia Prime. Fires raged throughout the capital, and the sky was filled with the flashes of orbital combat. The shuttle broke atmosphere just as a brilliant light erupted from the surface below. Kairos watched in horror as a massive shockwave spread across the planet's surface, obliterating everything in its path. Tears stung his eyes as he plotted a course away from the devastation. The weight of what had transpired, and the burden of the information he carried, settled heavily upon him. As stars streaked past the viewport, Kairos knew that the conflict had only just begun, and that the true battle lay in exposing the dark secrets that had led them to this point. The antimatter explosion faded from Kairos's viewport, leaving only the cold emptiness of space. His hands trembled as he guided the shuttle away from the devastation. The comm system crackled to life. "Dr. Kairos, this is Admiral Nexi. Do you copy?" Relief flooded through him. "I'm here, Admiral. What's our status?" "Regroup at these coordinates. We're gathering what's left of our fleet." Hours later, Kairos's shuttle docked with Nexi's flagship. He stumbled onto the bridge, exhaustion etched into his features. Nexi stood at the helm, her face a mask of dogged commitment. Beside her, Lieutenant Kral nursed a plasma burn on her arm. "We've called for reinforcements from across Vidian space," Nexi said, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. "But we're not waiting. We strike back now." Kairos opened his mouth to speak, but alarms blared throughout the ship. A junior officer's voice rang out. "Incoming transmission, Admiral. It's from Earth." The main screen flickered to life, revealing a stern-faced human in an ornate uniform. "This is Councilman Drace of the Terran Security Council. We strongly condemn the unprovoked Vidian attacks on our sovereign territories. Earth stands ready to defend its citizens and interests." Nexi's fist clenched. "Unprovoked? They destroyed our capital." The transmission cut out, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Karos felt the weight of the data chip in his pocket grow heavier. He cleared his throat. "Admiral, there's something you need to see." In a secure briefing room, Karos connected the chip to a holographic projector. Ancient Vidian text scrolled across the air, accompanied by disturbing images. "These are classified archives," Karos explained, his voice tight. "They detail our own species' history with biological experimentation. Centuries ago, we pursued the same dark path the humans now tread." Nexi's eyes widened as she absorbed the information. Super soldiers, genetic plagues. How is this possible? Why wasn't I aware of this? "It was buried deep," Karos said. "Our ancestors nearly drove themselves to extinction before abandoning the program and embracing ethical reforms." Kral's cybernetic eye whirred as she processed the data. "This changes everything. But why didn't you tell us sooner, Doctor?" Karos slumped into a chair. "I wanted irrefutable proof of the humans' actions first. I feared our own moral standing would be compromised." Nexi paced the room, her mind racing. "We need to get this information out, to everyone. Both sides need to see the truth." "A full subspace broadcast," Kral suggested. "We can use the Freen-Cori communications nexus." Alarms blared once again. A voice over the intercom. "Admiral, multiple human fleets detected. They're launching attacks across 3 systems." Nexi's eyebrows furrowed. "They're trying to silence us. Lieutenant Kral, assemble your team. We're going to Freen-Cori. Dr. Karos, you're with us. It's time to end this cycle of violence." As the flagship jumped to hyperspace, Karos stared out at the streaking stars. He knew the next few hours would determine the fate of both their species, and he prayed they weren't already too late. The next few weeks passed in a blur of tense negotiations and fragile truces. Karos found himself shuttling between makeshift command centers, his data chip the linchpin of a tenuous peace. Human and Vidian leaders, their faces haggard from sleepless nights, pored over the ancient archives and modern atrocities alike. But even as official channels buzzed with cautious optimism, Admiral Nexi's eyes remained hard. Her posture coiled like a spring. She cornered Karos after a particularly grueling session. "It's not over," she said, her voice low. "Our intel suggests a hardliner faction has gone dark." Karos felt his stomach churn. "Who?" "Colonel Hank Grimes. He's taken a team of augmented soldiers and vanished." Before Karos could respond, Lieutenant Alara Ven materialized at Nexi's side. The young Vidian's cybernetic implants pulsed with data streams. "Admiral," Alara said, her voice clipped, "we've located Grimes. He's set up shop on Erebus." Karos blanched. "Zephyr 6's moon. That's a death trap." Nexi's expression darkened. "Perfect for someone who doesn't want to be found. Alara, assemble a team. We need to shut this down before it spreads." Hours later, Karos watched from the bridge as a sleek stealth shuttle disengaged from the flagship. Alara's voice crackled over the comm. "Team is en route to Erebus. Estimated arrival in 6 hours." On Erebus, the air itself seemed to hunger. Toxic fumes seeped from fissures in the charcoal-black surface, swirling around the ankles of Alara's team. Krell, the disgraced commando, took point, her augmented vision piercing the murk. "Movement," Krell hissed. 12 o'clock. The team froze. A lumbering shape emerged from the mist, vaguely humanoid but grotesquely distorted. Muscles bulged beneath translucent skin, pulsing with an unnatural rhythm. Lydra, the xenobotanist, swallowed hard. Grimes' handiwork, no doubt. Alara raised her weapon. "Take it down, quietly." Krell's shots were precise, dropping the monstrosity before it could utter a sound. As they pushed deeper into the compound, the horrors multiplied. Failed experiments littered corridors, their agonized forms a testament to Grimes's madness. In the heart of the facility, Sergeant Rakim Cruz stood before a bank of monitors, his face a mask of revulsion. Maya, the rebel he'd grown to love, lay strapped to an operating table, her body already showing signs of Grimes' improvements. "This ends now," Cruz whispered. He moved to free Maya, but alarms blared throughout the complex. Grimes' voice boomed over the speakers. Intruders detected. Release the alpha subjects. The walls shuddered as massive stasis pods hissed open. Cruz grabbed Maya and ran, praying he wasn't too late. Alara's team fought their way through waves of mutated monstrosities, Krell's suicidal bravery clearing a path. They reached the main generator just as Cruz burst in, supporting a semi-conscious Maya. "Help us," he pleaded. Lydra's fingers flew over the control panel. "I can trigger a geothermal cascade. It'll bury this whole place." The floor buckled as Grimes' alpha subjects, towering abominations of muscle and metal, smashed through blast doors. "Do it," Alara ordered. As the facility began to tear itself apart, Cruz pushed Maya towards the retreating team. "Get her out of here!" Krell hesitated, then nodded, shouldering the wounded woman. The last thing Alara saw as their shuttle lifted off was Cruz, standing defiantly as Erebus consumed itself in fire and molten rock. Back on the flagship, Karos helped Maya into a medical pod. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused. "There are others," she rasped. "Other cells, still out there." Admiral Nexi's eyes sharp. She turned to Alara, who stood at rigid attention despite her wounds. "Lieutenant," Nexi said, her voice iron, "I have a new assignment for you." Alara nodded, her cybernetic eye glowing with steadfast perseverance. "I'm ready, Admiral." As the ship accelerated towards its next destination, Karos couldn't shake the feeling that they had only scratched the surface of the horrors yet to come. Karos watched the holographic display as Lieutenant Alara Ven's stealth cruiser sliced through the inky void of space. The young Vidian officer's cybernetic implants pulsed with data streams, her face a mask of concentration as she piloted the ship towards their next target. "Niflheim," Alara announced, her voice crisp. "Our intel suggests Grimes has set up shop on this ice ball." Admiral Nexi's hologram flickered to life on the bridge. "Proceed with caution, Lieutenant. We can't afford another Erebus." Alara nodded, her cybernetic eye whirring as it processed tactical data. "Understood, Admiral. We'll get the job done." The stealth cruiser dropped out of hyperspace, revealing a world of endless white. Niflheim's frozen surface glittered beneath them, jagged ice spires stretching towards the stars. "Scans detecting a shielded facility," reported Krell, her augmented vision piercing through the atmospheric interference. "Heavy fortifications. This won't be easy." Maya, still recovering from her ordeal on Erebus, leaned forward. "I recognize those energy signatures. It's Prometheus Corp tech. Grimes is definitely here." Alara's fingers danced across the control panel, plotting their approach. "We go in low and fast. Use the ion storm as cover." The ship plunged into Niflheim's turbulent atmosphere. Lightning crackled around them, battering the shields as they screamed toward the surface. Ahead, a massive structure loomed, a fortress of steel and ice dripping with defensive turrets. 3 minutes to insertion, Alara announced. "Gear up." In the cargo bay, Krell and a handful of human defectors donned specialized Arctic combat suits. Maya struggled to her feet, drive etched on her face. "I'm coming with you," she insisted. Krell shook her head. "You're not combat ready. Stay with the ship." Before Maya could protest, alarms blared throughout the vessel. Alara's voice crackled over the comm. "Incoming fire! Brace for impact!" The ship lurched violently as a barrage of experimental rail rounds tore through their shields. Krell steadied Maya as the deck buckled beneath them. "Change of plans," Alara shouted. "We're going in hot." The cargo bay doors blew open, revealing a maelstrom of snow and plasma fire. Krell didn't hesitate. She grabbed Maya and leapt into the howling void, the rest of the strike team close behind. They hit the ground hard, rolling to absorb the impact. Around them, Grimes's augmented soldiers swarmed from fortified bunkers. "Push for the main entrance!" Krell roared, her voice barely audible above the din of battle. The strike team fought their way through waves of mutated monstrosities. Failed experiments lurched from the shadows, their bodies twisted by Grimes's cruel ambitions. Krell's suicidal bravery cleared a path, her augmented strength allowing her to tear through steel and flesh alike. Inside the compound, the horrors multiplied. Test subjects screamed from within stasis pods, their forms warped beyond recognition. Maya retched, overcome by the stench of decay and chemicals. "We need to find Grimes," Alara ordered, her cybernetic eyes scanning for threats. "Krell, take point. Maya, stay close." They pushed deeper into the facility, fending off increasingly desperate attacks. In a cavernous laboratory they found their prize, and their worst fears confirmed. Vials of ancient Vidian bioweapons lined the walls, pulsing with sickly light. Holographic displays showed the plagues being spliced into human DNA sequences. "By the stars," Maya whispered, "he's creating an army immune to our weapons." Alarms blared throughout the complex. Grimes' voice boomed over hidden speakers. "Intruders! Release all subjects! Purge the data!" The walls shuddered as massive stasis pods hissed open. Grotesque figures emerged, their bodies a horrific fusion of metal, muscle, and infectious agents. "We're out of time," Alara shouted. "Plant the charges. We're bringing this whole place down." As Krell's team set demolition charges, Alara accessed a nearby terminal. Her cybernetic implants interfaced directly with the system, sifting through terabytes of data in seconds. "No," she breathed. "Grimes, he's not here. He's already gone." The floor buckled as Grimes's monstrous creations smashed through blast doors. Krell grabbed Alara, dragging her towards the exit. "We have to contain this," Alara insisted. "If those plagues get out—" An explosion rocked the facility. Through the breach, they saw Admiral Nexi's armada descending from the storm-racked sky. "New orders," Alara declared, her voice heavy. "We stay. We make sure nothing escapes." As Vidian forces engaged Grimes' defenders outside, Alara's team fought a desperate holding action within. They sealed bulkheads, incinerated samples, and fought waves of infected monstrosities. In the command center, Maya's fingers flew across holographic displays. "I've triggered a base overload. This place will be ash in 10 minutes. Alara nodded grimly. "Seal the exits. We can't risk—" The main screen flickered to life, revealing a scene of chaos outside. Colonel Grimes, his body twisted by his own experiments, assaulted Nexi's command shuttle with a barrage of experimental weaponry. "He's going for the Admiral," Krell growled. They watched helplessly as Nexi's shuttle plummeted towards the ice. At the last moment, the Admiral's cool-headed tactics prevailed. The shuttle pulled up, unleashing a devastating counterattack. Grimes stumbled, caught off guard. In that moment of weakness, Krell saw her chance. "I'm going after him," she snarled, sprinting for the exit. "Krell, wait!" Alara shouted, but it was too late. Outside, in the frigid wasteland, Krell confronted her nemesis. Grimes, more monster than man, towered over her. His augmented muscles rippled beneath translucent skin, veins pulsing with stolen Vidian bioweapons. "You're too late," Grimes laughed, his voice distorted. "The future belongs to the enhanced." Krell said nothing. She simply attacked, her own augmentations pushed to their limits. The two titans clashed in a fury of superhuman blows, the very ice cracking beneath their feet. In the end, Krell's discipline overcame Grimes's madness. She pinned him to the ground, her cybernetic eye glowing with cold fury. "It's over," she growled. But as Vidian forces swarmed the area, securing Grimes and containing the threat, a chill ran down Alara's spine. Scans revealed trace amounts of the ancient pathogens in the atmosphere. The genie was out of the bottle. Admiral Nexi's face was grim as she addressed the assembled forces. "We've won the battle, but at what cost? Quarantine protocols are now in effect. We need to find a cure before history repeats itself." As joint human-Vidian medical teams scrambled to action, Alara couldn't shake the feeling that their troubles were not nearly finished. The fragile alliance between species teetered on the brink, with the specter of ancient plagues looming over them all. The quarantine alarms blared through the Niflheim system, casting an eerie red glow across the bridge of Admiral Nexi's flagship. Lieutenant Alara Venn stood rigidly at attention, her cybernetic eye whirring as it processed the flood of incoming data. "Containment breach confirmed," she reported, her voice tight. "Scans detect trace amounts of ancient Vidian pathogens in the atmosphere." Admiral Nexi's face hardened. Initiate full lockdown protocols. No ships in or out of this system without my direct authorization. As the orders went out, Maya stumbled onto the bridge, her face pale. Admiral, we have a problem. Some of the captured rebel collaborators, they're showing symptoms. Alara's blood ran cold. She knew what this meant. The contagion had found a vector. Within hours, reports flooded in from neighboring human colonies. The ancient plague spread like wildfire, overwhelming medical facilities and sowing panic. In the war room, tensions reached a boiling point. Commander Thelma Yaren slammed her fist on the holographic display, her eyes blazing. This is an act of war. The rebels enabled Grimes. They're nothing more than bioweapons agents. Stand down, Commander, Alara countered, stepping between Yaren and the human representatives. Harsh measures will only create more extremists. We need to work together to find a cure. Admiral Nexi nodded grimly. Alara's right. Assemble a team. Your mission is to track down any survivors of the original Vidian bioweapons program. We need their expertise. Alara's strike team deployed within the hour. Krell took point, her augmented senses on high alert as they combed through abandoned research facilities and long-forgotten archives. Lydra, the xenobotanist, pored over fragmented data, searching for any clues that might lead them to the program's survivors. Their search led them to Opalax, the Vidian homeworld. In a rundown district on the outskirts of the capital, Alara found herself face-to-face with Dr. Resna N. The reclusive scientist's eyes darted nervously, her hands shaking as she clutched a worn datapad. I can't help you, N stammered. That research was buried for a reason. Alara leaned in, her voice low and urgent. Billions of lives are at stake, Doctor. We need your knowledge. N's drive crumbled. She revealed the existence of a universal counteragent, a breakthrough she had helped engineer centuries ago, but the components needed to synthesize it had been lost during the Vidian genophage. Undeterred, Alara secured authorization for a high-risk mission into contested frontier space. Their target, Ragnarok's 4, a hellish volcanic world rumored to hold deposits of the rare compounds they needed. As their ship broke through Ragnarok's turbulent atmosphere, proximity alarms screamed. A crude mining facility clung to the side of an active volcano, surrounded by makeshift defenses. We've got company, Krell growled, readying her weapons. A gruff voice crackled over the comms. This is Keth Riggs. You're in my airspace. State your business or get blasted out of the sky. Alara took a deep breath. Mr. Riggs, we're here to negotiate. We have reason to believe you're sitting on something far more valuable than you realize. Inside Riggs' compound, Alara laid out their desperate situation. The brash human renegade's eyes gleamed with a mix of greed and grudging respect. You've got guts, I'll give you that, Riggs chuckled. But my price just went up. Before Alara could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. Riggs cursed, bringing up a tactical display. Vidian Strike Force inbound. Looks like they don't want you getting your hands on my stash. We need to move, Alara ordered. Krell, secure the compounds. Lydra, prep for emergency evac. The team fought their way through waves of Vidian shock troops, Riggs lending his firepower to their cause. As they neared their extraction point, a new threat emerged. Human militants, their bodies ravaged by the plagues, launched a savage assault. They're trying to deny us the cure, Lydra shouted, barely audible over the din of battle. Krell stood her ground, buying time for the others to reach the ship. Go, she roared. I'll hold them off. Alara hesitated, torn between duty and loyalty. In that moment of indecision, a biohazard strike breached Krell's defenses. The disgraced commando fell, her augmented body finally giving out. With a heavy heart, Alara ordered the retreat. As their ship broke atmosphere, she watched Ragnarok's foils recede, the weight of Krell's sacrifice hanging over them all. Back on Opalax, Dr. N worked feverishly to synthesize the counteragent. But with each passing hour, more human colonies fell to the relentless plagues. Reprisal attacks intensified, threatening to reignite full-scale war. Alara stood before a window in the medical facility, watching ships filled with refugees and wounded streaming into Vidian space. The fragile alliance she had fought so hard to forge was crumbling before her eyes. A junior officer approached, his face grim. "Lieutenant, we've lost contact with the Procyon system. 3 more human worlds have gone dark." Alara's cybernetic eye pulsed with data, mapping the spread of the contagion. She knew that every moment counted, that billions of lives hung in the balance. But as she turned back to the chaos of the medical bay, a cold realization settled in her gut. They were running out of time. Time. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. Alara's cybernetic eye pulsed as she processed the grim data. She turned to face Dr. Resna N., who hunched over a holographic display, her fingers flying across the interface. "How close are we?" Alara asked, her voice tight. N didn't look up. "Close, but not close enough." The lab hummed with frantic energy. Vidian and human scientists worked side by side, their former animosities forgotten in the face of mutual extinction. Alarms blared periodically, announcing new outbreaks across the galaxy. A thunderous explosion rocked the facility. Alara stumbled, catching herself on a nearby console. Through the reinforced windows, she saw a plume of smoke rising from the eastern wing. "We're under attack," Maya shouted, bursting into the lab. "Human radicals. They've breached the outer defenses." Alara's mind raced. "And how much longer?" The doctor's eyes were wide with panic. "I've isolated a viable strain, but synthesis will take..." Another explosion, closer this time. The lab's emergency shutters began to close. "We're out of time," Alara growled. "Maya, help me secure the samples. We need to evacuate." They worked frantically, gathering vials and data cores. The sounds of battle grew louder. Just as they finished, the lab doors burst open. Human militants poured in, their eyes wild with desperation and rage. In the chaos that followed, Alara lost sight of Dr. N. She fought her way through the smoke and debris, Maya at her side. They found N slumped against a shattered containment unit, blood seeping from a wound in her side. "The serum," N gasped, pressing a cracked vial into Alara's hand. "It's not enough. You can't..." "We'll find a way," Alara insisted, but N's eyes were already growing dim. With a final rattling breath, the doctor whispered, "Ragnaroks, the atmosphere, catalyst." Alara's eye whirred as it processed N's last words. Understanding dawned. "Maya, we need to get to Ragnarok's 4 now." They fought their way to a waiting shuttle, the precious vial clutched tightly in Alara's grip. As they broke atmosphere, Alara watched Opalax recede, the research facility a burning scar on its surface. The journey to Ragnarok's 4 was tense. Alara pored over N's research notes, her cybernetic implants working overtime to decode the complex formulas. "We'll need to construct a makeshift lab," she explained to Maya. "The volcanic atmosphere contains trace elements we can use to restart the synthesis." Maya nodded grimly. "And the human renegades?" "They'll be right behind us. We'll have to work fast." As they entered Ragnarok's turbulent atmosphere, proximity alarms blared. Through the viewport, Alara saw the jagged silhouette of Riggs's old mining facility, and beyond it, the gathering storm. They touched down amid swirling ash and sulfurous fumes. Alara's team fanned out, scavenging equipment and hijacking industrial replicators. Every moment counted. In the heart of the abandoned processing hub, they constructed their resurrection lab. Alara's fingers flew across improvised consoles, attempting to recreate N's final breakthrough. The first attacks came as night fell. Colonel Grimes' forces hammered their position with salvaged Vidian weaponry. Alara's team fought back, buying precious seconds for their desperate work. Hours blurred together. One by one, Alara's allies fell to the relentless siege, or the creeping tendrils of the plague. Soon only she and Maya remained. A deafening roar filled the air. The storm had arrived. "It's now or never," Alara shouted over the howling wind. She input the final sequence, praying it would be enough. Suddenly, the facility's walls buckled. Toxic atmosphere poured in. Maya's eyes met Alara's, filled with stubborn persistence. "I'll buy you time," Maya said, her voice already changing as the plague took hold. Before Alara could protest, Maya sealed her inside the lab. Through the reinforced glass, Alara watched her friend turn to face the oncoming horde. Alara's fingers trembled as she triggered the final sequence. The lab's systems hummed to life, dispersing the counteragent into Ragnarok's roiling atmosphere. As consciousness faded, Alara saw the storm's winds shift. Carried on currents of ash and fire, the fruits of their daring plan spread across the stars. She closed her eyes, hoping it would be enough.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.